Good morning. I am Toni Box. I am here live from the Assembly Content Studio. We are here at Possible in sunny Miami, talking all things innovation and really taking this opportunity to speak to a lot of the great thought leaders that are in media and really shaping innovation and culture in media. I am here today with Conal Byrne, CEO of iHeartMedia Digital Audio Group. Welcome, Conal.
Thank you so much for having me, Toni.
Yeah, great to have you. We're excited to have a conversation today. We know that when it comes to big ideas and innovation, whether or not we succeed really comes down to how much we really understand our audience.
Yeah.
And iHeartMedia has done some amazing research around audiences and really helping identify this nearly 50% of this audience in America that feels unseen by marketers and advertisers. I would love to hear from you about this ignored consumer.
Oh.
Who are they?
Yeah.
First off.
Yeah. No, listen, the results of this research, which has been ongoing for 2-3 years, we're in partnership with Malcolm Gladwell actually around this research, really took our breath away. We're a mass reach media company. We reach almost 90% of American adults a month through about 1,000 broadcast radio stations. When you do that, it is incredibly important to understand what that audience is thinking, feeling, where they're coming from. We're kind of obsessed with that, as we should be. And so we dug into this a couple of years ago to try to get a better sense of, is there a disconnect between, I'll just sort of say, our world, the marketing community, and the people that we're trying to talk to and tell stories to. So we ran bits of research across the last 2-3 years. In the latest round, this big, loud statistic came back to us that really, like I say, sort of shocked us. 44% of American adults feel ignored, meaning overlooked, disenfranchised, put aside by American media. Now, media is a big term. That can mean anything from the stuff you watch on TV, but importantly, it also means the marketing stories that we put out there, that we put in front of people's faces and in their ears. This really shocked us. It really sort of verified for us that there is this disconnect in what we think we're doing, the stories we think we're telling, and the people we think we're reaching because we're not.
Yeah, sounds like we absolutely still have a job to be done. What can you tell us about the demographic?
Yeah,
of this
it's funny
audience?
because I think where we go in our heads, especially as marketing executives in our community and in our profession, is we knee-jerk to, this must be a Southeast issue. This must be a multicultural issue. I can sort of in my brain knee-jerk to places, I think at least, that feel ignored, that feel overlooked by mainstream media. And in fact, it isn't. It's harder. It is everywhere. It is as much Queens, New York as Orange County, Los Angeles. It's as much the Midwest as the coasts. It is as much high to low socioeconomic. It is every ethnicity. So there are pockets, meaningful pockets, almost half of the country, that feels like the stuff we make, the stories we tell, the way we put it out there into the world is not connecting with them, that they don't feel seen, heard, and therefore integrated into the stuff that we're making. That was the shock to us.
Right. Well, and I know there's a lot of research too, just showing that people are more likely to even pay more for those products and services from those brands that really resonate with their own values.
That's right.
And identities. Let's talk a bit about what is it that marketers can do better.
So listen, we all come to the world with biases. It's not to pretend that that's going to stop. That's called being human at some point. It just gets tricky when your job, literally as a marketer, is to punch through those biases and speak the language of the folks that you are trying to connect with, to educate, maybe to buy a product, right? Our job is to put those biases aside, to maybe get a little bit uncomfortable with the places that we place our marketing and the kind of marketing that we do. I'll give you an easy example. Most marketers work very hard to keep certain topics out of the creative that we make and put out there into the world. symbols like military or symbols like religion. We literally treat these things like Thanksgiving dinner. Whatever you do, don't mention that, and don't put it in your creative. But in the research we saw, and we saw this time and again, these were the values that were super important to the ignored American consumer. I value family, I value friends, I value the military, I value freedom of speech. Religion and spirituality is hugely important in my life. I think there's only a third of Americans who don't go to church. The other 2/3 go at different cadences, different times of the year, some every week, some at Christmas, but it's a part of their lives. These are ways in for us as marketers to think about it very tactically. The next creative session you have as a marketer, let topics and subject matters in the room that you're now sort of keeping at the door. Now listen, I have my own bias. I come from an audio company called iHeartMedia. I believe we reach a mass reach audience across the United States in a way that no one else here does. I believe we reach them in their own language. I believe we reach them as friends. I also want to offer that as a tool. But even before marketers get there, take a step back, and maybe a fundamental shift into discomfort would help us.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk a bit about that, because how do you ensure that you're not having, leaning in too much from that marketing bias per se, and making sure that you have those unique perspectives and backgrounds that are like seated at the table when we're building out a marketing strategy?
I'll start with a funny example. Like, one of the things we saw in this research was that half of the country has never heard of and doesn't know what the letters NFT means. Almost 2/3 of the country has never heard of the TV show Succession. These are sort of silly, fun examples, but they're in the bloodstream of us as marketers. 3 years ago, if you didn't have a strategy, I'm sure you the same, for NFTs, you would literally get in trouble. And yet you have fully half the country that's like, I just don't know what that is. So I mentioned there that I start there. We're literally talking a different language creatively than the folks we're trying to reach. Now, I think to your question directly, what we sometimes view as brand safety, what we sometimes view as the places I can't go as a marketer, the places I can't integrate my creative, is actually not brand unsafe. It's just day-to-day conversation for most of the country. Conservative talk is a good example. Most marketers steer very clear of it because they're afraid it'll be highly politicized, they'll be in environments that aren't safe for them, when really it's just actually hourly conversation for much of America. An easier example is the country format. It's the #1 music format in the United States. That alone surprises marketers. We have the #1 country broadcaster. He broadcasts out of Nashville every morning, Bobby Bones. I can't think of a better hack for a marketer to slip into the mainstream conversation in a natural, organic way, and suddenly the ignored consumer feels a little bit less ignored. But you mentioned it a couple minutes ago. If you don't do this as a marketer, you don't do it at your own peril. Because this was some of the other stuff we saw in the research, was not just that consumers would favor and support and go out of their way to do so, brands that stepped into places where they felt seen, but they would punish brands that didn't. They would avoid and not spend with brands, even if it was convenient. That didn't. That's got to catch your attention.
So it sounds like we need to lean a little bit more into the uncomfortable to really reach these ignored audiences in a meaningful way. So we talked about this a little bit earlier before the segment about audio just having this huge opportunity, this huge moment right now. And as people are just reevaluating their usage of social media. And like finding those channels where they can still lean into, find that, feeling of, connection and community and topics that resonate with them or help them become more like interesting people. And I think the beauty of audio too is that you have this amazing opportunity to reach such a diverse audience and really start to test into maybe some of those topics or podcasters that maybe you've been a little bit more uncomfortable
Oh, yeah.
with in the
Oh, yeah.
past. So would love to hear, like, sort of maybe some of those shifts that maybe, you're seeing on your end.
It's a fascinating moment in media. Like, truly, I know it's always kind of interesting. This is a really interesting moment. Malcolm Gladwell helped us with this research, and a couple weeks ago he told a crowd of stories similar to this. I was interviewing him, and he said, if I had 30 seconds to make someone cry, if I had 30 seconds and I could use any medium at my disposal, I could write a book, I could make a video, or I could tell a story in audio, the only way I could do that is in audio. These other mediums, text, he's written a lot of books, video, he's made a lot of documentaries, they come in at you through the brain. Audio shoots straight for your heart. He's like, I've seen this time and again. Telling a story in human voice to another human is the most powerful medium in the world. We are catching up to that currently as marketers. The reason we're talking about audio so much is probably podcasting. You have this new mass reach medium with 1 out of 2 Americans a month now listening to a podcast. That's a pretty big deal in media. The reason audio works is broadcast radio. Again, you still have this medium that has not declined in monthly reach. 90% of American adults a month is pretty big. But the way that we're reaching that mass reach audience is different. And as you and I were talking about, we saw this stat recently that truly blew my mind. Almost as much as 44% of Americans feeling ignored. 7 out of 10 users that we asked, digital users of any kind, what are you doing to make up time? To give more of your time share to podcasting. 7 out of 10 said, I'm consuming less social media.
Wow.
That math, you'd say,
That's
well, I
huge.
guess that makes sense, except I've never seen that in media. I've never seen, especially a non-visual medium, pull from social media, stand up to it and pull share from it. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, I mentioned this earlier too, but I feel like podcasters are like my best friends. They don't really know who I am, but they are connecting with me on what feels like a very personal level.
Companionship.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a weird thing. We've asked listeners, in the different mediums that you consume, what bucket do you put the talent that you're watching, listening to, whatever? We've come at this 100 ways. When you listen to Charlemagne the God in the morning, or Ryan Seacrest, or Elvis Duran, or Bobby Bones, are they talent for you? Okay, no. Are they a creator? No. Are they a celebrity? Not so much. We kept asking different iterations of this question until we got down to the words that made the big difference, which was, I don't know, are they a friend? Yes, that's what it feels like.
Yes.
That's what it feels like. It feels like when I'm driving my kids to school in the morning, and I've got Ryan on in the morning in the car, and he's kind of sitting next to me, and the kids are in the back yelling at me, and I might have forgot a backpack or two. Yeah, he's a friend. That's the bucket I put him in. Everything we do in our business flows from that. The trust that we have with the listener, the trust that we can therefore extend to a marketer, to integrate a message, the performance of that message, it all flows from that thing.
Yeah, it's interesting too, like even within influencer marketing, like our creator commerce channel at Assembly, we are incorporating audio more and more into that because it's authentic.
Yes.
It's what people want. They want those authentic connections, and traditional influencer marketing isn't really hitting the same anymore.
It's not hitting the same. You have a whole new wave of influencers and podcasts. You know how much time people spend of all the media they consume with just audio? 31%. Almost a third of your time you spend with audio. You know the average marketer spends about 9% of their investment? We've got a lot of work to do.
Agreed. Well, Conal, to wrap things up, would love to leave the audience with some key takeaways. Yeah. So what are some actionable steps that marketers should consider to better connect with their audiences?
First of all, use more audio. Revisit broadcast radio as your mass reach medium. A different kind of influencer is at your disposal, like you just said. Rethink that and let different topics and subject matters into the room in your next creative session, and you'd be surprised.
There's our playbook. Thank you so much, Conal.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Toni. Thanks.
Absolutely.